Subtle skills, big results.
Welcome to the Ninja Selling Podcast.
Hey everyone, it's your good friend Eric Thompson. This is the Ninja Selling Podcast. Thank you so much for listening and for engaging. Looking forward to this interview. And this interview is eventually going to get to a real life story of a reverse offer that worked. Okay, and you're going to hear it firsthand from a ninja. And you're going to hear also firsthand a little bit of his story, some great results that he's getting as a result of Ninja. I want everyone to meet now, and it is my pleasure to introduce everyone to Chris Purser. Say hello, Chris.
Hey everybody. Hey, Eric, how are you?
I am fantastic. I'm especially good because you're here with us. Chris Purser is with Howard Hanna, Beverly Hanks. And Chris, you're in Asheville, North Carolina. Is that right?
The beautiful city of Asheville, North Carolina, yes.
The beautiful city of Asheville.
Beautiful city.
Yes,
absolutely.
Put it on your list. I was lucky enough to visit Asheville with my good friend Neil Hanks, who's very much involved with your company, obviously, given his given his last name. He had me there as a guest several years ago. Everyone, get that on your list. Visit Asheville, right, Chris? It's an amazing place.
Absolutely. This is an amazing place. And even though you've heard about Helene and the destruction that happened here, we have recovered quickly. This city is beautiful. It's open. Come and visit. We'd love to have you.
Absolutely. And we're so happy to hear about the recovery and bouncing back from what happened. And your company was a big part of that recovery. So bravo, kudos to everyone there at your company. You are a ninja company. Chris, you are a ninja. You have been a ninja for 4 years, right? So tell us how you got introduced to ninja.
So I'm a brand new real estate agent from March of 2021. For the first 6 months, I had no business and I was nervous about even putting money down to go to the ninja installation. But in August of that year, in 2021, I did the first ninja installation. And I remember writing my salary down of what I thought my dream amount of money would be. It was $166,000, more money than I've ever probably made in my entire lifetime for a year. And when I put that number down, I had absolutely no clients, no buyers, no sellers, no anything. And it just so happens that in a year's time, I actually went over my goal. So I actually went and made more than $166,000 the first year, which was mind blowing.
Okay, Chris, the other thing that's fun and great and interesting is that we happen to be recording this podcast during your best week so far in real estate. How much volume are you going to close this week?
Nearly 4 million in volume this week.
Nearly 4 million.
Best of my career. Yes.
Best of your career.
Absolutely. Amazing. Amazing. Yep.
You can probably feel the kudos, feel the celebration coming away from the Ninja Nation. That's terrific.
Thank you.
You're one of our Ninja coaching clients. Thank you for that. You work with Coach Terry Johnson. You've been working with her since January. What are some of the things that you've been focusing on with Terry, and maybe another way to ask that, what are some things you had on your mind when you decided to hire Terry?
I wanted to be able to have direction. I wanted to be able to take the ninja skills that I've learned in 2021 and apply it to now. I'm actually going to be doing the ninja installation the beginning of September here in Asheville, North Carolina. And Terry has been absolutely a wonderful coach. Not only is she caring, but she listens, and we come up with real life strategies of how to deal with real life events that happen in real estate. And it has been mind blowing to me to feel that much support from someone that I can talk to every other week and be able to tell her my struggles and tell her what my goals are and tell her what some of the triumphs that I've had in the last couple of weeks. So I've been since January, and she's wonderful. She's so great.
It's great. It's great to hear and be able to talk through transactions with her, talk through buyers and sellers. Obviously not talk through like you would with your managing broker, but talk through those scenarios on how to be most helpful to your clients, how to navigate through tougher situations. And again, to have that strategy partner has helped you out. I'm really happy to hear that. Speaking of strategy, Chris, I think we should get to kind of the meat of today. So, Chris, you're nice enough to share, and we're going to get into. We're going to roll up our sleeves. You're going to share about a real life reverse offer, and actually, you've done now how many of these, Chris?
2 recently within the last month.
Yeah, so you've done two. So one of them is closed. We're going to focus on that one, but I also know everyone that Chris has now done this twice, and so I'll have a couple of questions about that second one, Chris. And I know we'll be more sensitive to that one because it's not closed yet. But a couple things I'd like to say up front about this. This concept has, in terms of people talking about it, people asking questions about it, has really caught fire ever since we have included it in the Ninja installation as a strategy. Ever since Larry brought it up in the recent Ninja sales meeting that we've started hosting the first Monday of every month, this topic has caught fire. There is a video snippet from that sales meeting of Larry discussing a reverse offer that went onto Instagram. My friends, it has gone viral, more than viral. And it has been interesting, sometimes even entertaining to read the comments about this. And so what I know will come out of this, Chris, today, people are going to get a lot of clarity about this. They're going to, you're so nice to share, and people are going to hear this, how this works firsthand. Because I know, given that so many people are hearing about this concept for the first time, they're thinking, wait a minute, how on earth does that even work? Gosh, is it even legal? We've had that question.
Mhm.
What do you say to your seller? What do you say to the agent on the other side of the transaction? We're going to ask all those kind of questions with you, Chris. And then obviously, you all, please, you want to run this by your principal broker, make sure they're on board. But think of the terminology reverse offer that does explain how it works. Some other terminology that I think is helpful is all this is a seller's offer, right? This is an offer to sell. We're all very familiar with an offer to buy. That's maybe more customary, more usual. Many more transactions occur that way with an offer to purchase, an offer to buy. This is just an offer to sell. This is a seller's offer. It's an offer coming from a seller as opposed to an offer coming from a buyer. So in that case, yes, it's okay. It's all right. Again, run it by your principal broker, but it's perfectly fine to do. Okay, so Chris, now we're going to get into your story. We're going to use kind of round numbers. You've asked that we not share exact numbers because we want to be sensitive to this seller. But everyone should know that this property was well north of $1 million. And so, Chris, this was your listing.
Yep, I represented the seller.
Representing the seller. And seller was happened to be a husband and wife couple.
Correct. Yes.
For how long was the property on the market before you started this process of the seller's offer?
December of 2024.
Okay.
So it had been on for several months.
So about around 6 to 7 months.
Correct.
It had been on the market.
Yes.
With price reductions along the way or no?
We did have price reductions along the way. Each price reduction gave the opportunity for other buyers to come in that have never, hadn't seen it before. So yes, we did have several price reductions during that time period.
Okay, got it. And what was the market like for this kind of property as during those 6 to 7 months as the property was on the market? Were you watching and experiencing competing properties sell, watching them go under contract and sell, or was that whole price range kind of slow?
The whole price range was very slow. We have had a massive slowdown in the luxury property market here in Asheville. It has dramatically increased over time, but after Helene, I think there were a lot of people that were apprehensive about coming here. Then the beginning of the year was a whole nother story of things that caused the luxury market to not as active. So the luxury market was not nearly as active as it had been in the past months.
Okay.
And so, yeah.
Was the property getting showings, or was it a scenario where you weren't even getting showings?
So in the beginning, when we first listed the property, we had a good many showings. And then the showings nearly almost completely halted. So there was very few, if any, showings during the time, about 3 months into it.
Okay. So that's kind of interesting. Even though you were reducing price along the way, the number of showings were actually going down. It's proving that concept that we talk about. The best opportunity any seller has, the best opportunity any property has, is right at the beginning. That's where you have the buyers who are waiting for a property like this. They're eager. They're excited to see what's new on the market. They're going to look at it. But do you think? And I think the market proves this out, or the transaction proves this out. But do you think initially, Chris, you were maybe overpriced?
I believe that we were overpriced for the time period. There were a lot of mitigating factors. This was also a short-term rental downstairs and a long-term rental that was generating at least 70,000 or more of income a year. So we had to take that in consideration when pricing it, but I do think it was overpriced for the market at the time.
Okay, got it. So fast forward, you're several months into this listing, and you told me that you had a buyer that started to look at it a few times. You said that they were kind of kicking the tires.
So we had this buyer that showed up and came and, expressed interest in the property, that he and she really liked it. It was important for us to figure out who the target buyer would be for this property. And here, the one thing that I kept saying, it was going to be someone local and some other factors, but it was definitely somebody that was local that was interested in it, and they knew it was on the market, and they wanted to get it for a deal. They wanted to get it for as little as possible. They knew that we had been slowly dropping the price, and they came back for a second showing and still no offer. So that's how all the reverse offers started, because they just kept coming back and never made a never made an offer. So
Got it. Okay, so and I'm guessing you were hearing this from their realtor, from their agent, that they want a deal, they want a discount. They've watched it be on the market for several months. They watched the price reductions. Is that right? It was in communication with their agent that you were hearing that?
yes, and the fact that this was an list agent, a company showing that we actually toured the buyer during that time period in the house twice. And so that was, I think, an important factor of knowing who the buyer was, knowing their interest level. They gave a lot of information about their motivation and why they were moving and that kind of thing. So I listened to all those things to try to help figure out exactly what we needed to do on our side for the seller.
Got it. Interesting. Very interesting. So you had to be there for the showings, which meant that you got to know these buyers, and they happen to be sharing some things about their motivation, et cetera. So speaking of motivation, your sellers were motivated because they were moving out of town, right? They were moving to another location.
That's right. They were moving to another location and they had found a property and identified it and really, really wanted to go ahead and try to acquire that property. So that was a motivating factor for them.
Okay. Something motivating you, in addition to wanting to help your seller, of course, but you had a deadline where the listing agreement was going to expire in the near future.
Yes, like within about a month and a half, the listing would have been expired. And of course, I didn't want that to happen either. So,
Right. So all these things are coming into alignment. You have a seller who's motivated. They want to get on to the next part of their life. It aligns with what we talk about at Ninja. Our job is to help people get to where they want to go on time, help them go from the life they have to the life they dream about. They had a life that they were more than dreaming about. They had even had a property picked out. You have a buyer clearly showing interest. They've been there twice. You're even having a chance to meet them a couple times. You have a listing that's expiring. Was the agent working with the buyer? Were they saying things to you like, "Oh yeah, I think you should expect an offer. I think we're going to write an offer. I hope to get in." Like, what were they saying about an expectation of an offer being on the way?
this is what they said. Get ready for this. If you get another offer, please let us know.
Oh gosh, I think we all, I just heard the whole
If
Ninja
we,
Nation say, "I've heard that one before."
it's
I've heard
true.
that one before.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
true. That's exactly what was being said, because I already met the buyers, I already knew them, I already knew their motivation, but definitely it was kind of Yep, just let us know when you get an offer and call us and let us know. So
Got it. Which is really challenging, right? That's really, really
very
hard.
challenging, very challenging.
Okay, so you had learned about the reverse offer. Let's also call it a seller's offer. I think that might be an easier term for people to get their head around and understand. You had learned about this concept, this strategy in a Ninja installation. Is that right?
I did. That was the first time I'd heard about it in August of 2021.
Yeah,
Yep.
got it. Had you? I'm guessing that you hadn't watched or even experienced firsthand these happen, but you happen to have remembered it. Is that how this story goes? That you said, hey, wait a second, I remember this strategy.
So the time was ticking before the expiration of the listing. There had to be something that needed to be thought of outside the box to try to figure out how can we get this buyer off the fence and make a decision and put in an offer. And so it basically boiled down to the opportunity for us to get an offer, talk to the seller who was very pleased with us coming up with something to try to get them to make an offer. And we did. We came up with an offer and offer terms that the seller felt like they could live with that was significantly less than what we had had it listed at the time for. But what it did was give us the opportunity to give them an offer to let them know where the seller's head was and what their thoughts were about the offer, but also to get them to start a conversation, which is exactly what it did.
Yeah, right. It gets the ball in play, as we
It
say
does.
in Ninja. By the way, Chris said significant. If people, I'm guessing people are wondering, well, I wonder how much less than the list price they made the offer for, and it was about 10%. Everyone should know. So there they were with the list price. The offer that was made to the buyer was approximately 10% off the list price. Chris, tell us more about how you introduced this concept to the seller. Because I'm guessing they had never experienced this before or knew this as a strategy. Is that right?
So, yes, and it was important for me to talk to my broker in charge to make sure that this was something that would be okay to do, and I felt confident enough to be able to do it, but I wanted her blessing, and she did. But it was also an explanation with the seller of, "This is what we wanna do. You're motivated to go ahead and go off somewhere else and get this place that you really, really want, and we need to get the buyer to come off the sidelines." We started having other showings at the time, and we started having other interest of someone that came back twice. So it also, after we explained it to the seller, she was all on board. The explanation that we gave was, let's try to do something to try to get them to move the needle, is how I said it. She was all behind it, of us just trying to think outside the box and do something different. So it's definitely different to have a seller propose an offer to a buyer.
You're saying she. So again, it was a husband and wife, and you found that she was really in the lead. She was kind of the lead communicator.
She was the lead communicator. They communicated to each other, but she was my point of contact as far as that goes.
One thing we notice as a trend, and Chris, tell me if this was true for your transaction, the trend is it tends to be a power person seller and a peace or perfection buyer, because you have a seller that now your seller had agreed to price reductions, but sometimes it's a power seller who doesn't want to do that. And then you have a peace of perfection buyer who's afraid of offending the seller with a low offer. That feels awkward to that buyer. That personality type buyer feels maybe even confrontational. They don't want to do that. They don't want to be in a that type of interaction where there's some friction there, right? So peace and perfection people are averse to that. Power people have no problem with that, and power people also tend to be more open-minded to things like this because they love a strategy that's going to help them win. So all that being said, Chris, was that true for you? Were those dynamics happening in this transaction?
They were both power people. Power seller, power buyer.
Oh,
Oh,
no
oh, you're
kidding.
talking about,
Okay.
oh,
Okay.
yeah, you're talking about the sellers only, right?
No, well,
Are you talking about
usually,
the seller and the buyer, or are you talking about
yeah.
just the sellers?
Stereotypically, it's a power seller and a peace buyer. But you're saying both, they were both.
They were
Yeah.
absolutely both power people.
Okay.
They
No, I
were.
can see that too, because you have a power buyer who says, I'm not, this is priced too high or whatever. Let's see what they do. So that they both, both sides kind of digging in their heels.
And that's exactly what happened. Both sides dug in their heels. One was waiting for the other. The buyer was definitely waiting for the seller to either have another offer come in or another price reduction.
I think a good way to introduce this, just as a coaching moment for everyone, and Chris, this is what you did. You say to the seller, okay, so here you are. You have this scenario. We've been on the market for this amount of time. We've had this amount of activity, these many showings, still no offers. You've identified this property. This is when you want to get there. We have a buyer clearly interested, but reluctant to make an offer. Would you be open-minded to a strategy that would have the potential to put this together? Would you be open to an idea, a concept, an approach that can help you to get to that new property on time? A seller in that kind of situation is very likely to say, yes, especially when they're power. Yes. What do you got?
And motivated, power and motivated.
They
Yeah.
are clearly motivated, very motivated.
Yes.
Okay. So you walk them through the strategy and you even got them to become clear about what terms they would accept.
Correct.
Right? So
Yes.
then what? And so now you have to talk to the agent on the other side, who's probably also learning about this for the first time.
I have to tell you, I got laughed at first, okay? Because it was like, "Oh my gosh, I've never heard of that before," because they really haven't. It's not something that normally happens, and so I had to explain it to them. We are proposing and making an offer to the buyer of what terms the seller feels comfortable with moving forward in an offer. And, the agent was very open to it and very open to trying to do something because I think they wanted, and their motivation too was to try to help the buyer, move forward on a house they really, really like. So
Yeah, great. And did you use the same paperwork you would have used as if you were working with a buyer? Did you use the same document when you presented that offer to the buyer?
we did. So it was the same offer that we actually use for buyers, and it was what terms are we filling in, and what terms are you okay with, and then we had the offer written and then signed. And so definitely something that was new to all parties, but definitely something that worked because it did start a conversation.
Yeah.
And Eric, I do want to tell you the other thing that it did too. We had someone at the time that was very interested in the house. They came back for a second showing, and that had nothing to do with this buyer that we had just given the reverse offer to. But we were able to say that we had an offer in play, that we had an offer that was actually in play currently. So please go ahead, and if you do, go ahead if your client is interested, and go ahead and make an offer if you'd like. So it was kind of twofold, trying to give the offer to the buyer to start a conversation, but also let other parties know that we do have an offer in hand.
Got it. Yeah. And you did. That was absolutely accurate. Yeah. We notice sometimes when we show people this strategy, when they're introduced to it for the first time, maybe even start to overthink it. They become very confused by this. But this is as simple as, and you heard Chris say it, it's as simple as use the same document as if you were working with a buyer, but instead the seller fills it out and the seller signs it. So initially, it only has the seller signature. It's lacking the buyer signature. And so just when a buyer makes an offer to a seller, they fill it out. It's lacking the seller signature. It has the buyer signature. That's all this is. Same paperwork,
It's the same thing, same exact thing.
same exact thing. So we're not going to overthink it.
No, and there's no different paperwork. It would be the same paperwork if I was making an offer for a buyer
Right.
to a
Right.
seller.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So you reach out to the agent working with the buyer, let them know that this was coming, sent them the offer. What was there, a counter offer? Was there back and forth or
Good question. There was from the buyer an appreciation for us doing that, which was not something that I thought that would have happened, to be quite honest. I wasn't expecting them to appreciate us going ahead and sending them an offer. But there was a counteroffer, and there was a counteroffer back to the seller. Again, this started a conversation that probably wouldn't have happened had we not went ahead and made a reverse offer or seller's offer to the buyer. So
I appreciate you sharing that they appreciated it. That what a great observation. That's such a great point. And it makes sense, right? Because now they have the ball in play. Now they have something tangible to work with, something realistic to work with. Sometimes we find with a property that's maybe priced higher than what the market is saying it should be priced at, the buyers sometimes don't even know where to start. And that can hold a buyer back from getting the ball in play. They say, well, I don't even know where to start. Like this property in my mind is overpriced, but where do I start? Will I offend the seller? Is it worth my time? Where do I go? And so they choose not to do anything. But the great thing about this strategy is it gets the ball in play. Now we have something tangible to work with.
yeah, absolutely. And this first time was very successful, but I've done it recently as well. And the buyer appreciated us making that reverse offer to them as well. So it is something that I'm putting in my toolbox, and it's something that I'm carrying with me to make sure that if we have people that are apprehensive about making an offer, you're exactly right. I think sometimes buyers don't do anything because they don't know what to do. They don't want to be offensive. It kind of sets the tone for this is what we feel like as the seller's representative, and the seller, what the seller feels comfortable with moving forward, what type of offer and what type of terms. It's not only about the purchase price either. It's about terms, how quickly can they close? What kind of financing, and those are things that the buyer would know. But I do think it's important to get that information from the buyer's agent. Are they paying with cash? Are they paying with a mortgage? How are they paying for this before you make the offer? Because it makes it a little bit more real, I think, by putting in there, the cash or mortgage or, whatever the loan type may be.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah, makes sense. So so now you have a second transaction going with the seller's offer, same strategy. It hasn't closed yet. So we'll stop short of going into detail on this one because it hasn't closed yet. But let me ask you this, Chris, on this second transaction, how did you bring it up with the seller? Was it pretty much the same way? Same kind of approach with the seller?
It was the same way. We're thinking outside the box. We've had this person who has said that they really like it, but they're not in the place where they feel comfortable, I guess, making an offer going forward. Communication, I think, with the buyer's agent is very, very important in this, to have a good relationship, to be able to talk and ask these questions, to see if they feel comfortable with that. So far, with both agents that I've worked with, they've both been open to it. It's been something that they've said, let's try it. Let's see what happens. This was interesting because the second seller, or the second buyer, actually, in this case, had a committee that they were voting on the house. It was like all their family members. And so they had voted that they wanted this house, but, they just weren't willing to come off the fence. And so again, it's trying to start a conversation, and that's what happened, is us sending a reverse offer to them, and they did have a counter. So not getting into much detail, but definitely it was a conversation starter again.
Yeah. It worked to get the ball in play.
Yes.
So the moral of the story is that it works. The stuff works. This works.
It does work. It does work.
Talk to your principal broker, of course, and don't overthink it. It's very straightforward. Use the same paperwork. Communication is essential. Trust is essential. But that's the same as any transaction, right? Motivation is essential. Clarity is essential. The same as any other transaction. This can really work in a lot of scenarios. Chris, we appreciate you sharing not just your ninja story, but also this very specific story about how to make a seller's offer work.
And it does work. And I'm so thankful. Eric, thank you so much for having me.
It is our pleasure. So everyone, again, it's Chris Purser. He is with Howard Hanna Beverly Hanks in beautiful Asheville, North Carolina. I have been your host, Eric Thompson. I am the president of Ninja Coaching. You are all part of the Ninja Nation. We appreciate you so much. Thank you for engaging with this podcast, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. Everyone take care. Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, visit us at theninjasellingpodcast.com to learn more about ninja selling classes and coaching to get you started or further your journey on the ninja path.
Thank you for joining us. Now go have an incredible day.